I'm writing this because I'm genuinely scared and don't know what else to do. My name is Sarah, I'm 23 years old, and what started as my boyfriend trying to help me make friends has turned into a nightmare of obsession and harassment that won't stop no matter what I do. I started dating my boyfriend Marcus about 2 years ago during one of the lowest points in my life. I was extremely introverted, had no friends, and barely spoke to anyone outside of necessary interactions. My isolation was making me miserable, and Marcus could see how much I was struggling with loneliness. A few months into our relationship, Marcus had to move to another country for work. We decided to try long distance because what we had felt worth fighting for. But the separation made my isolation even worse. Marcus felt terrible about leaving me alone, so he came up with what seemed like a perfect solution at the time. He'd introduced me to his closest friends so we could all hang out online together, play games, and give me the social connection I desperately needed. Marcus's friend group consisted of two people he'd known since high school. The first guy, who I'll call Aaron, had also moved to a different country and was dealing with a completely different time zone. Aaron had his own busy life and work schedule, so while he'd join our calls occasionally, he wasn't around very much. The second friend, who I'll call Blake, lived in the same country as me and was taking a gap year while the rest of us were in university. Blake had tons of free time and was always available to hang out online. At first, this seemed great. Blake was friendly and welcoming, making an effort to include me in conversations and games. I was grateful to finally have someone to talk to during the day when Marcus was asleep due to the time difference. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. Blake and I would play games together, chat about random things, and I felt like I was finally developing a friendship outside of my relationship with Marcus. I was slowly coming out of my shell and feeling less lonely. Marcus was happy that his plan was working and that I had someone to keep me company. But then things started to shift in ways I didn't recognize as problematic at first. Whenever Marcus and I had even minor disagreements, the kind of small conflicts every couple has, Blake would somehow insert himself into the situation. He'd message me separately asking what happened, and when I'd vent about being frustrated with long distance or whatever we'd argued about, Blake would validate my feelings in ways that felt supportive at first. But Blake's support quickly turned into something else. He'd start saying things like Marcus didn't appreciate me enough, that Marcus was being inconsiderate, that I deserved better treatment. He'd point out every small thing Marcus did wrong and magnify it into something bigger. Initially, I was stressed about the long-distance situation and already feeling insecure, so part of me almost believed what Blake was saying. Looking back, I can see Blake was deliberately trying to drive a wedge between Marcus and me. But at the time, I was vulnerable and lonely, and Blake's constant attention and apparent concern felt validating. He was telling me what I wanted to hear when I was feeling neglected and isolated. Eventually, Marcus and I resolved whatever conflict we'd been having, and during that conversation, I mentioned some of the things Blake had been saying to me. Marcus's reaction was immediate and concerned. He told me that Blake had been completely lying and twisting situations to make Marcus look bad. Marcus showed me message screenshots and context that proved Blake had been manipulating me with false information. Marcus explained that he'd noticed Blake getting overly involved in our relationship and suspected Blake had ulterior motives. To protect our relationship from Blake's interference, Marcus suggested we pretend we weren't dating anymore when Blake was around. We'd act like friends in group settings and keep our actual relationship private. I wasn't sure if pretending to be broken up was the best strategy, but I agreed to try it. Almost immediately, Blake's behavior changed. He stopped openly criticizing Marcus to me, stopped getting involved in our business, though he'd still make subtle comments here and there about Marcus being boring or mean, just less directly than before. This arrangement continued for several months. Blake seemed to back off from interfering in my relationship with Marcus, and things felt more stable. I thought maybe we'd successfully navigated the situation and could maintain a friendship with Blake without the drama. Then everything exploded when Blake confessed his feelings for me. It came completely out of nowhere during a private message conversation. One minute, we were talking about a game we'd been playing, and the next minute, Blake was telling me he had feelings for me and wanted to date me. I was completely blindsided. I genuinely thought Blake viewed me as just a friend, nothing more. His confession made me realize that all the months of him criticizing Marcus and trying to break us up had been because Blake wanted me for himself. He'd been working to sabotage my relationship so he could swoop in as the alternative. What made it worse was that Blake was pushy about it. He didn't just confess and then back off when I seemed surprised. He kept pushing for an answer, asking what I thought, whether I'd consider dating him. Since I wasn't supposed to tell Marcus I was still together, I told Blake I was too busy with work and university to be in a relationship right now, especially after my last relationship ended. I thought saying I wasn't ready would be enough to let him down gently. But the next day, Blake messaged me again, saying we could figure something out, that my schedule didn't matter, that we could make it work. He was completely ignoring my clear disinterest and lack of enthusiasm. I had to explicitly tell him I wasn't interested in dating anyone right now before he seemed to get the hint. Blake specifically told me not to tell Marcus about his confession, which I found strange since Blake thought Marcus and I had broken up. Why would it matter if I told my supposed ex-boyfriend? I immediately told Marcus everything, and he said he honestly saw it coming based on Blake's behavior over the months. Marcus felt bad that I was in this uncomfortable position, but he was clear that I needed to distance myself from Blake for obvious reasons. I started pulling back from Blake gradually. I'd reply to his messages less frequently, join voice calls with him less often, decline invitations to play games together, all while trying to not make it too obvious or abrupt. I was trying to slowly fade out of the friendship without creating drama. Blake noticed immediately and did not handle it well. He started having what I can only describe as emotional meltdowns, repeatedly kicking me out of our friend group and calling me fake. He'd say he regretted ever adding me to the group, that I was a terrible friend, that I'd used him. Then when I'd accept being kicked out and just move on with my day, Blake would apologize and add me back to the group. He'd act completely normal and friendly for a few days, then the cycle would repeat. For months, this pattern continued, with Blake getting upset that I wasn't replying fast enough or that I was hiding things from him. He'd explode, kick me out, calm down, apologize, and bring me back, over and over. The situation crossed into truly disturbing territory one evening when I was on a call with Marcus. Blake called me on a separate device, and I answered while Marcus listened in without Blake knowing. Blake immediately started demanding that I show him my private message conversations with Marcus. I was shocked. I asked Blake who he thought he was to demand access to my private conversations. Was he my father? Obviously, I refused, which made Blake even more aggressive and demanding. I eventually hung up on him, and predictably, he calmed down after a while and apologized as usual. But the next few days, Blake did the exact same thing again. He demanded to see my chat history with Marcus, insisted that Marcus and I needed to stop hiding things from him. He'd noticed that Marcus and I had set our Steam status to private, and Blake was obsessed with this, constantly bringing it up and having meltdowns about not being able to see what we were doing online. Marcus and I decided we were done hiding. If Blake's problem was that we were setting things to private, we'd make everything public and see what happened. We turned on our Steam online status so Blake could see when we were playing games together. Blake immediately called me, having another meltdown about seeing us gaming together. But this time, he also involved Marcus directly. He sent Marcus a message saying something sarcastic like, "Have fun playing with her," and then removed both of us from his contacts on every platform. I'd had enough. This was my last straw, and I wasn't willing to deal with this toxic cycle anymore. I accepted that the friendship was over, blocked Blake on every single platform I could think of, and decided to move on with my life. But Blake didn't move on. He started emailing me from multiple email addresses. He created alternative accounts on various platforms to message me. He called me from different phone numbers, always with the same message, that he was sorry, that he wouldn't do it again, begging me to be his friend again. He'd already said he wouldn't do it again at least 10 times before, and every single time he'd gone back to the same toxic behavior within days. I had no reason to believe this time would be any different. What's even more disturbing is that Blake has also started messaging Marcus, suddenly acting like they're best friends and talking about what a good friend he's been over the years. This is the same person who spent months telling me Marcus was a terrible person, that I should avoid him, that they weren't even close friends. Now he's trying to rebuild his connection with Marcus while simultaneously harassing me to come back. I've blocked Blake on every platform I can think of. I don't respond to the emails or messages from new accounts. I've made it crystal clear I want no contact with him. But he keeps finding new ways to reach me, and it's honestly frightening at this point. Thankfully, Blake hasn't shown up at my house or started stalking me in physical spaces, but the constant digital harassment is making me anxious and scared. I don't know what else Blake might escalate to if he continues to be this obsessed with forcing contact. Marcus hasn't responded to Blake's messages either and has no idea how to handle this situation. We're both uncomfortable and unsure what the right move is. Do we respond and explicitly tell Blake to stop? Do we continue ignoring everything and hope he eventually gives up? Do we need to involve authorities, even though the harassment is only online? I feel guilty because Marcus introduced me to Blake trying to help me make friends and combat my loneliness. Instead, it created this nightmare situation where someone who claimed to be a friend turned out to be obsessed and unwilling to accept boundaries. I'm sharing this story because I need advice and also because I want other people to recognize these warning signs. Blake's behavior showed red flags from the beginning, constantly inserting himself into my relationship, trying to turn me against Marcus, getting overly involved in conflicts that weren't his business. I dismissed these signs because I was lonely and grateful for the friendship. If someone in your life is constantly criticizing your partner to you, trying to convince you that your relationship is bad, and positioning themselves as the better alternative, that's not a friend looking out for you. That's someone with their own agenda trying to manipulate the situation for their benefit. And if someone confesses feelings for you and you reject them, a respectful person accepts that rejection and moves on. They don't cycle through emotional manipulation, demanding access to your private life, having meltdowns to guilt you into contact, and then harassing you from multiple accounts when you try to establish boundaries. I'm still dealing with this situation and don't have a resolution yet. Blake is still sending emails and messages from new accounts every few days. I'm documenting everything in case I need to take legal action, but I'm hoping he'll eventually accept that I'm not going to respond and will leave me alone. What would you do if a friend confessed feelings, you rejected them, and they started this kind of obsessive harassment? How do you make someone understand that no means no when they refuse to accept boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you or you've experienced something similar, please subscribe for more real stories about recognizing toxic behavior and protecting yourself from people who won't respect your boundaries.